Welcome back to Homeopathy at Home with Melissa. Hi, Melissa.
Bree, so happy to be here with you again for Materia Medica Monday.
Yeah, we're back at it. Today's remedy is going to be Stramonium.
Man, it's such a good remedy.
So good. One that I've used for a few different things, so I'm excited to talk about it.
It's so good. Big children's remedy.
Okay. Yeah, and that's actually what I've used it for. So I am really looking forward to it. But before we get there, we have a new thing to share with you guys. Another one of Melissa's, what I was going to say, not a product, it's like a creation.
Yes. I love creating stuff.
Really, I'm not kidding you guys. She talked to me yesterday about about this, giving you some backstory. Like, I'm going to start doing a planner this way. I'm not kidding you. Today she emails me with it. She made the planner. Like, created it. This would have taken me a literal month of hard work. It's beautiful. I am a planner person. I have special pens I use. I love specifically organized, but not too crazy. And I'm a mom, homeschooler. I work part-time at home. I love it. I'm going to let her show you. If you're watching on YouTube, she had it printed out pretty. I haven't done that yet, but it is amazing. And as always, very beautiful, like all of the things you create.
Thank you. And so it's very simple. It's very, very simple. So you've got the cover, and what I'm doing, so I put my name on there. If you're a client of mine, current client, where we're having follow-ups, I'm going to put your name on yours and send it to you as part of your follow-up. But if you buy this from my website, it's $12.95, and I don't know yet what I'm going to do. I mean, obviously I can't put your name on there because it's going to be an instant download. So it's probably not going to have a name. It's just going to say, planner. All right. So there's the cover. And then I have the 2023 events, just like an overview of your year that you can put on there. And then for each week, you have a weekly planner. So you've got, and this might be hard to see on here, but you've got, Monday through Saturday. Where's Sunday?
They didn't have Sunday. Sunday is Sabbath. We don't do stuff on that day. Okay.
Purposely left it off. Okay. You've got priority, goals, and notes down here, and you've got Monday through Saturday up here. All right. So the fun part to me.
Yes, this is like really actually exciting and fun.
Oh man, you know what? I didn't print out the updated one. Okay, that's okay. So you'll get to see it when the updated one is just a little bit different than this. But so you see, this is a daily planner, and I'm just going to kind of run through quickly what all is on the updated one. So you've got a place to track your moods. The weather, you can put the date up top and which day of the week it is. You can write today's goals, appointments, exercise, how many minutes, how many steps if you want to, things to get done today, water intake, meal tracker. It's just a little like breakfast, lunch, dinner and snacks. Bible reading. So I put on there, if you have a Bible in a year plan, you can just do a check mark that you read for that day, or you can write down what, the verses or the whatever, however you want to do that. Book study, if you're studying a book. So what I do is I'm doing a Bible in a year plan. And I'm always studying some kind of book, and a biblical, book that takes me like a Bible study. So, I'll just either do a check mark there, or, and probably write down what book I'm studying. And today I'm grateful for, there's a place for sleep in the updated one where you're going to track your sleep, and symptoms. So you're going to have a place to track your symptoms, and then a place to write down your remedies and supplements that you took for that day. This is going to be so helpful to keep you organized, especially for your follow-ups with me. So, or your follow-ups with yourself, like if you're treating your family. So it's going to help you to stay on top of what symptoms you're having, and, track your sleep and see where things are getting better. And then there's also the last page of each week is a journal. So you can journal every day if you want to, You can journal, just once a week, if whatever you want to do with that. This is printable. So you're going to print, if you want to journal every day, print, 6 or 7 journal pages if you want. But the reason this is so simple is the instructions basically are you print pages 1 through 11 to begin with. And then after that, each week you print pages 3 through 11. So the first couple of pages stay consistent throughout the whole year. Then pages 3 through 11 are your weekly, has your daily, your weekly, and your journal. So I think that's going to be helpful. I hope you love it. Me and Bree are
So
excited
pretty.
about it.
Yeah, listen, you guys, there's like little like pictures of things. I have it on my phone. I have it pulled up because I'm looking at it again. And the water intake are little water droplets. I just think it's cute. And it's very, very good. What I told her I appreciate about planners is they're unique to a specific reason, things I need to remember. I've literally never found one that will track remedies and symptoms
Mhm.
or even mood, all those things together. So I'm very excited about this. I also think I'm going to print off, I haven't decided how I'm going to do it yet, but I can print off one for my kids to keep track of remedies I'm doing with them. I don't think I need a page for each one,
Yeah.
but you might, depending on the case you're dealing with, or if you're going through certain subjects, school things with your kids, you can print pages for each person.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah. So it's totally, you can do with it what you want. You don't have to, I'm not putting 52 weeks in this planner because I don't want you to have to print 52 weeks of papers and then not use them. So just print as you're going to use them. So to save yourself paper and time and ink.
So fun. I love
Okay.
it so much.
Yes, me too. Thank you. Thanks for watching me walk through that.
All right, Stramonium.
Ammonium is thorn apple and Jimson weed, stinkweed, devil's snare. Those are some
All these great names.
names. So this is, the name is derived from Greek for nightshade and mad strychnos. So this is the remedy that we use today. Actually, the remedy that we use today is derived from a tincture of the fresh plant in flower and in fruit. First described as a medicine, not a homeopathic medicine, by a German physician in the 1730s, he prescribed it for epilepsy, convulsions, and melancholia. Are you going to look that one up?
Yep. I have a feeling I know what it is, but I just want to make sure with these old words.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, it's depression, deep sadness and gloom.
Okay. So, the plant carries a warning in nurseries, that it's poisonous. It's an annual, it grows into a shrubby, many branched plant with ovate leaves, and edges of the leaves are toothed. Leaves can be 8 inches long, olive green leaves with deep purplish veins. So anything in nature that has purple, there's something sinister about it.
It's a beautiful picture of a plant.
Which suggests one of the miasms. So stramonium is useful in the miasm that's purplish is the syphilitic miasm. And remember, at this point in time during this recording, I am going to release the miasms course soon, but you may be listening to this later after it's already released. You'll find the details on the course on miasms on my website. So the color of the syphilitic state is deep purple, a dangerous blood color. It's foul smelling. It bears white or mauve trumpet-shaped flowers, staggeringly beautiful, right? So they drop in a perfect trumpety kind of shape. These leaves, you got to look it up. Flowers are long and fragrant, particularly attractive to moths, which feed on them. So they grow they grow readily on calcareous soil, which is soil rich in calcium carbonate. Stramonium is a satellite remedy for a calcium carbonate constitution, Calc Carb constitution. So it's a satellite remedy that would be useful in a person with a Calc Carb constitution.
So that is meaning Calc Carb is, satellites. What do you call that when they're in the atmosphere? Orbit. Yes. Satellites orbit things. So they are like a Calc Carb constitution is like the planet, and the Stramonium's a moon or whatever, a satellite going around, maybe a remedy to consider for that type of person.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
So
there could be multiple.
that's right. Yeah. So the Calc Carb constitution is likely going to at some point use Stramonium in their care.
So cool.
Very cool. So let's see. Generally, people who need Stramonium often have a fundamental constitution that is Calc Carb. 75 to 80% of the population of the earth have the Calc Carb constitution.
Wow.
Yeah. So especially in children, you see nice little Calc Carb child who's throwing these terrible symptoms. Once we've dealt with the Stramonium picture, that little Calc Carb will come back again. This is what I really...
This is blowing my mind right now.
Yes. Yes. I loved listening to Dr. Murphy describe this process. Like, this baby's born, you've got this precious little Calc Carb baby, or this precious little pulsatilla baby, or whatever, right? And then, or the sweet little quiet lycopodium, and then a symptom pops up. You take care of that symptom picture, and the sweet little, the sweetness and the normal, like who they were when they were born, comes back. Does that make sense?
Okay, so when you are, let's say we're treating a Calc Carb baby, person, whatever, would you be giving Calc Carb regularly as like, okay, so I'm clarifying for myself, but also for people listening, when we say that a Calc Carb baby, does that mean we are using Calc Carb regularly to give to this person, or does that mean their demeanor, their constitution is just a Calc Carb constitution?
So it depends on what's presenting. So if their constitution is Calc Carb, then generally they need Calc Carb. But when things pop up, so they're throwing these terrible symptoms, these temper tantrums, they're having these night terrors, all the things that we're going to talk about, then you leave Calc Carb, you go to Stramonium or whatever satellite remedy they need. And then when the Calc Carb presents itself again, then you go back to giving them Calc Carb.
So you're not doing both? Not usually. I mean, with Calc Carb, okay, in that case, Calc Carb, you could. But in other constitutions, maybe you wouldn't necessarily do the constitutional remedy with one of these satellite remedies.
Right. Yeah. So we have to remember that most of this is written by classical
Correct
homeopaths. So that, so normally we would just use one remedy at a time. And that really does work, y'all. It really does. So the Calc Carb comes back, and then they're well, and Calc Carb is a state of health, right? So they're methodical, practical, down to earth. They want to make sure that they have a structure in life. This is Calc Carb. They need a shell. They don't like being outside the shell. That's their state of health. So in the wild, it favors rubbish mounds close to the areas of cultivation and human habitation, where it's usually propagated by birds. Popular with garden centers because of its very dramatic appearance. So now we're talking about Stramonium again. I don't want to be confusing here.
We're back to the plant talking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stramonium is popular with garden centers because of its very dramatic appearance, but it's sold with the warning that it's toxic. Stramonium is one of your toxic plant. So what makes it toxic are alkaloids. So there are two alkaloids that are present in the chemical composition, and that's atropine and hyoscyamine. So hyoscyamus, the remedy, is very close to stramonium, and often, we use one or the other in like ADD, ADHD,
behavioral things.
things. Yes, yes. Okay. So, stramonium can cause, well, actually, these alkaloids can cause hallucinations, convulsions, and severe damage to the central nervous system. This is, we're talking about the whole plant, right? So a person ingests the plant. These are the things that it can cause. So these effects are caused by the inhibition of the parasympathetic nervous impulses. These control the involuntary movements of muscle and the GI tract, gastrointestinal tract, the urinary tract, and the lungs.
This is fascinating for me.
Symptoms of ingesting the stramonium plant. Now, that's not what we're telling you to do, right? So just if you're brand new to homeopathy, the principle of homeopathy is like cures like. Therefore, what the whole form can cause, the homeopathic form can uproot. So that's why we're going through telling you what would happen to you if you ingest the whole plant, which we are saying do not do. It's toxic and can cause you to be very sick, which it can cause delirium. It can cause hypothermia, tachycardia, bizarre behavior. Your pupils might dilate, photophobia, amnesia. Symptoms can appear within 30 to 60 minutes of ingestion, which is very quick. And if the then he will have no memory of those effects.
You chopped up a little bit right there when you were talking about the amnesia.
Okay, let me go back. So amnesia, and then symptoms can appear within 30 to 60 minutes of ingestion. If the consumer survives, then he will have no memory of those things that just happened to him. So stramonium was originally used as an herbal medicine, particularly by Americans, the Chinese, and the Indian subcontinent. They used stramonium, the plant, to treat asthma, and it was used for pain relief, like an analgesic during surgery or bone setting. Remember, you can't remember what happens to you after you've taken it. So that's why they would use it.
So it's not like it's relieving the pain, it's that you won't remember. So
right.
Wow, that is pretty crazy.
So it's quite useful. Medicinal doses would be risky, and sometimes the medicinal dose would kill you rather than the operation, which is why we love homeopathy, because homeopathy is not going to kill you.
Right. Also, maybe don't use homeopathy as an analgesic if you're going into an operation. We're also not saying to do that.
Absolutely. No.
Hopefully we don't need to clarify, but just in case.
Yeah, you never know. Okay. So in other parts of the world, stramonium is used to form a poultice on stings and bites. It's been used for muscle spasms and Parkinson's. So let's see. We don't need to talk about all of that. Oh goodness.
So I think most of that is kind of repetitive to historical things that we've talked about. Yeah. I thought it was interesting that it said after the establishment of the East India Company in the 1700s, when trade with India was opened up, that's when stramonium became popular in Europe.
Yeah. And Hahnemann first introduced this as a homeopathic medicine in 1805.
You broke up right there, but she said 1805. That's old.
Yeah. 1805. Yeah. Am I
Amazing.
breaking up a lot?
Just right in that little section here and there, but not over the course of the whole recording. No.
So
As I just said that, you froze. I'm texting her, so we'll hang out.
I'm back. Yeah, I got kicked off of my hotspot. Why does it do that? It does that. Like after an hour,
Because,
hour and a half, it kicks me off my hotspot.
yeah,
Okay, so what I was saying is, do you want to go through like just you want to start with the keynotes and then just stop it like each we'll take turns through the keynotes?
yeah. We read a few and then pass off.
Huh?
Yeah, we'll read a few, then pass it off. Go back and forth.
Sounds
Yeah. Okay, so some keynotes of Stramonium are mental and physical violence,
sorry.
spasms.
Wait.
Wait, go okay.
So sorry. So clarify that we are now talking about the homeopathic form. If you were to take it homeopathically, 30C, 200C, 6C is very common.
Common. Okay, so we are not talking about the plant. Do not take the plant to treat these things. We're now switching to homeopathic version. So keynotes for the homeopathic remedies Stramonium are mental and physical violence, spasms and convulsions, dread to the point of terror. So one of the remedies that's terrified, including night terrors or terrors in the dark. They are afraid of death, which is common in the syphilitic miasm.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
Yeah. So also remember when we're reading these keynotes, friends, is that they don't have to have all these things. So these are things that could be.
Right. Oh, and I have used it for night terrors. So when it says mental and mental and physical violence, my son was very violent in his sleep. So
Yeah.
keep that in mind. Like, I think our minds automatically think physical violence, meaning toward another person or an animal. It could be that, but it could also be like him in his sleep. His body is very physically violent in his movements.
Yeah. Very true. Stramonium, homeopathic stramonium can help with hallucinations. It's almost always terrifying and threatening. These are terrifying and threatening hallucinations. And so one quick example I have is when my son had a fever and he was in the bed beside me and he sat up and he was freaking out. And I was like, what is happening right now? I had never seen a person hallucinate before. And he was like, they're throwing darts at me. Like he knew and he remembered it. So when he came out of it, he was like, I literally just saw, darts coming at me. And so he was terrified. He was absolutely terrified. And it was threatening. That was a threatening hallucination. So they might see wild animals, imaginary illusions of mutilation. Stramonium is one of the self-harmers. Might imagine themselves like Alice in Wonderland as being enormous.
Also good for loquacious people, which if you listen to our last podcast, we talked about that means you talk a lot. So these people are very speedy talkers, often incoherent. They're just blabbing, full of fear. They may appear as if they're praying, like begging to be relieved from these symptoms. Talking a lot, that loquacity, how do you even say that?
Yeah, you're saying it right.
Loquacity, good
Mhm.
word, is a useful symptom because there's not many remedies that are listed for that rubric. The other poison that's most famous for loquacity is lachesis, which is what we talked about in the last one. The difference between lachesis and stramonium is you'll understand every word that lachesis says. you might not understand their meaning because they're very disconnected and jump from one thing to another, but you'll understand the words. With stramonium, they're talking a lot, but might be incoherent. You're not able to figure out what they're saying. So you can't figure out the words all the time.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So that's something I'm putting that away in my brain.
Yes. I remember that with the night terrors that my oldest son used to have. He would be trying to tell me something as he was screaming, right? But I couldn't understand a
Couldn't
word.
understand it. Yeah. Okay. Do you want me to do the next one? You want to do that?
Well, so homeopathic stramonium can help with constant movement, twitching, jerking, twitching eyes. They can be so bad that it can create facial distortion. Sometimes in the state of fever and being out of it, they'll do almost like ballet movements that they're just like distorting their body. Weird movements. Hyoscyamus, which I mentioned earlier, won't do that. Hyoscyamus will be in the bed with fever and they'll start picking at the bedclothes. And that's called carphologia. So they pick. Stramonium is great for Tourette's and vocal tics.
On that same vein, it can be really good for stammering. Or delirium. Is that trembling? Is that what it's saying?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, similar to alcohol intoxication, or this could be if they're intoxicated, where they're no longer in control of their limbs. So very shaky. And painlessness, where you would expect pain, but they don't seem to feel it.
So, man, I might cut this part out. So you're going to tell me, Bree, if we should cut this part out or not. I'm thinking like there's a lot in here that I'm thinking about for someone who has used or is using meth.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of these symptoms in here for a meth user.
I actually thought detox from many things, but I know particularly that the mania almost.
Yeah.
The shakiness, and they're not reactive to pain.
They don't feel pain. They're very okay. So anyway,
And the twitching and stuff.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
out of control of their physical body. Yeah, that's a good one. So
what meth also does is they pick their skin. That's why they have the sores.
yeah.
So like
Which is hyoscyamus or no?
That's right. Hyoscyamus picks the bedclothes.
Yeah,
Okay.
which I will say they are similar, aren't they? Like, or similar in some ways, but there are some distinguishing keynotes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the flasher, the person that might flash you out in public, uncovering themselves, indecent talk, lewd talk, inappropriate, improper, filthy jokes, and then they have wild laughter after that. So you want to be careful with that symptom picture, because more often when you get that flasher type mentality and dirty jokes and high pitched laugh, it's more hyoscyamus than stramonium. So you need to compare hyoscyamus and stramonium because they're like we just said, they're very similar. And so you look at both of them and decide which one matches your symptom picture the best.
Okay, so stramonium can also be good if there's been suppression of acute inflammatory disease, which is also probably why it's so prevalent. It's great for kids. There's almost always a fever. This could be for a child who has had a fever suppressed with antibiotics or put in an ice bath. That suppression can create the madness that you see in belladonna, stramonium, or hyoscyamus, which is very interesting when you're talking about febrile seizures and things like that. When we suppress the fever and then we see that hallucination or the craziness and we think it's the fever. So suppression of acute fever is really dangerous because they need that. And if you, we've talked about this before, every fever that a child has teaches that child's body something about its abilities. And if the child finds its own way to heal and its or the own way to heal its body of a fever, it's learned a lifelong lesson, even if you are helping that with a remedy. I love that. So, I mean, there's a lot. So, stramonium fever is not quite as high. Um, belladonna is really good for those super high fevers. Stramonium is not quite so high. But if they're pretty high and belladonna is not working, you might consider it. So then it gets into some other deeper stuff about belladonna, Calc
Yeah.
Carb, and all of those things that we won't get into today. But
Yep.
consider it if you're seeing some of that behavior with suppressed sickness or with a fever that belladonna doesn't seem to help with.
Right. Those were keynotes that we just talked about. Right. And that was just, those were keynotes. So now we talk about the mental and emotional picture of stramonium. And so this person could have ailments from a fright or a shock. So there was a frightening situation or a shocking situation that they were involved in or witnessed, and then they have these ailments ever since then. It's a big remedy for that, but not the only one. So ailments from birth trauma. I always think of aconite first for
Yeah.
birth trauma, and a baby who was involved in that. And so that it might be for the child or the mother, the stramonium, mostly for the child. The way you'll see that in the child is that they'll have night terrors. They won't sleep well. They'll scream in their sleep. So sad. Might be the mother because she had such a terrifying time, especially if she hemorrhaged. Worse for C-section or cord around the neck, or one of the hidden unspoken birth traumas that nobody thinks about. Fast delivery. When the fast delivery, that is a shock to that baby.
Into your body, like it's just so fast.
Yeah, right. Very true.
Yeah.
If a baby shoots out, the first thing it sees is light, and it's scary. And they've been in the dark this whole time. They've been in the womb. PTSD is is one of the things that homeopathic stramonium can help with. Could be birth, or it could be because you've survived a war zone, car crash, plane crash, witnessed something so shocking, something terrible, like terrible things where you saw terrible things that just aren't things that we see every day in real life. And so this person may have never been well since the effects of the force of evil. So people who witness evil can go into the stramonium state. If you go into drug abuse, then you might witness it within the hallucinations that we see.
Mm-hmm.
So post-recreational drug abuse remedy.
Well, you said that. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
Stramonium has a lot of fear. All-consuming fear. So fear of the dark, like we said before, is particularly bad in the dark. At night, fear of ghosts, but also a fascination with those things, which is interesting. They might watch a horror movie or a scary movie and can't get it out of their mind, but then they want to go watch another one. So keep in mind, if it's children, they're not watching horror movies, but there are things my son used to see that I didn't think were scary. We're really picky, but he had dreams of this one picture. It was a wolf's eyes. The wolf wasn't even a scary wolf, but the eyes were glowing. Mm-hmm. He had dreams of that wolf or pictured it in his room. But he did want to watch that movie. He didn't tell me for a long time that he saw the wolf at night. Like, yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be a horror movie is all I'm saying if it's in a kid. It could be a fear and fascination of water. So it's fascinating because of the way it looks, glistening water. It's really beautiful. but also aggravates them and they're afraid. It's a hydrophobia remedy. So it's a remedy for rabies. Stramonium, people may have a fear of wild animals. It's not the only one, but it's one of them, which is a part of the tubercular miasm. Isn't that funny? Miasms keep coming up when you're doing the course. um, and they may be very afraid of tunnels, which this is an interesting side note. Birth trauma could be the birth tunnel, which, I mean, do with that what you will. Might be a little bit of a stretch, but I still think it's interesting. A fear of closed places, of suffocation, of strangers, violence, being attacked, a fear of graveyards, a fear of being devoured. They have nightmares. And like I had just mentioned, the dreams include those specific fears. They might wake up screaming in terror and cling to whoever comes in, or they might also lash out and become antagonistic.
Yeah.
So like you said, Melissa, aconite is also a good terrified remedy, but there's a little bit of differences. I love this. Aconite is not mad. The madness, I think, meaning crazy, right?
Yeah.
Not anger.
Well, stramonium is angry too.
True, yeah. So either way, maybe some of that wildness or the anger. Aconite is simply shocked, and stramonium is shocked with going mad, like an out of body almost response.
Yeah. Wow. So stramonium is likely to react irrationally. They react on impulse and violently towards random targets. So they show very little compassion. So this might be a person with Asperger's. When they're also frightened, they might require stramonium.
They show very little trust in other people, so they can be very suspicious and suspicious about the motives of other people. They expect punishment even if they can't remember what it was for. That's so interesting. And they react in rage and fear in equal measure, which is not a good combination.
Yeah.
That is so good. And this is, I mean, we get into spiritual things often in here, but we talk a lot about fear and not operating out of a place of fear. So I believe there's probably a spiritual element to that too, that the fear and then the anger linked makes for extreme behavior.
Yep. The stramonium person needs light. They're so afraid of the dark that they cannot be in it. Calc Carb needs light also, but not as strongly as stramonium. So Calc Carb likes to make sure that their environment is everything that they know about. They need that constant, that that they like the routines and they like everything to be what they know. And they're uncomfortable to start with in an environment which is completely new to them. So they need to orientate themselves first. Gosh, I've talked to parents whose children, did that. They needed to go to a new place, whether it be church or school or wherever, and get oriented with the place before they could actually go in and function.
Yeah. Or even if you imagine if they're scared of the dark in a new room or a new place, because in their room, they like know where everything goes. And I've even seen that as we've moved with adjustments and stuff. They get scared when they see something and they don't identify it, what it is in the dark, or that it really is the fear of the dark or not knowing what's in the dark.
Yeah. So they need to have
company. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, they need to have company in case the fears are too strong. And this remedy can be, so if they need the company because their fears are so strong, then you might start thinking of pulsatilla. But pulsatilla really, really needs company and tactile. They need
like they want to be snuggled.
They need to be snuggled. They want to touch you. And stramonium can be a lot like that. So fears of being alone with themselves, they don't face fear well, and they may compensate by being perpetrators of violence.
Light can trigger this behavior for a stramonium person. For some, it can trigger migraines. Light can trigger mood swings for some people. Stramonium is one of the remedies where it could trigger spasms. So they could become very nauseated and clenched up. Their diaphragm could go into a spasm. So it's just a good remedy for people who react to light.
Yeah.
It was used, this is the link, it was used for epileptics in the material dose. So that means like that's when they used it as the whole form as medicine. So in the homeopathic potency, it can also be used for epileptics without the dangers of using the whole form. And you can look for the pupil of the eye. It's meant to dilate and contract. What flashing light does to eyes, the immediate result is to produce quantities of adrenaline. And you require adrenaline to run away from something fearful. That's so interesting. So much interesting information here. There's that amnesia.
Yeah.
They're unable to remember when they're in that delirious state. After a violent episode, they have no idea that they did it. And they might become obsessed with certain kinds of religion, and particularly those where there's a lot of singing and dancing. That's kind of funny.
What are those? I don't know.
I know. Which ones, if you know, do a lot of
singing and dancing. Huh? Well,
Yeah.
No, we worship Fire Church, so.
I mean, yeah, I've been at some churches where they sing and dance.
Okay, so the appearance of stramonium, their pupils might be dilated. They have fear on their face. You can see it. They have the face of fear. They stare. The rubric says staring in black type. Their eyes are wide open, because that's happening and the pupils are so dilated, adrenaline is pumping in their body. One way to get to that calm down, one way to get that part to calm down is to lower the light and get them to do some deep breathing. If you breathe down into your abdomen, you're shutting off your adrenaline and introducing into the body quantities of cortisol. Cortisol calms everything down.
You guys getting a lot of good education tonight.
I can all use that, like at night or something. I've got this bright light shining my face at night, messing up my.
This is like some deep breathing exercises.
So their face may be hot and red and features contorted with horror or aggression. They might draw back in alarm at anything that seems strange. They can be teeth grinders, often appear disoriented, have a staggering gait, lose control of their limbs, have a tendency to fall backwards, twitching spasms, often delicate hand movements, desire for lights to be on, hates twinkling things, dread of water, don't offer a glass of water to a stramonium patient unless it's a beaker, in a beaker, and they can see it.
They can't see. Yeah, okay. Maybe if they're scared and they don't know what they're drinking, it's better.
I guess.
Stramonium is really, really important and great for children. You might not get that totally insane picture. This might be a quiet and dreamy child in their office, just a little Calc Carb, but the mom will tell you that they have a filthy temper. Man, I have this child. I didn't realize though that this was it, and it really is just so funny. When asked, the child may claim not to remember any of his nightmares. And there are some children who won't remember, or who remember but just won't tell you. They just don't want to talk about it. But stramonium they don't remember. They like actually can't remember them. So night terrors are very, very common. And that is different than bad dreams. If you've ever experienced them,
Know the different, you'll know
it
it.
is different. It's terror is the word. It's
It
very
really
different than a bad dream. So don't just jump to stramonium if your kid has a nightmare.
You can't wake them up. Like you can't make the screaming stop. You can't
Yeah.
wake them up.
It
They're
is, it
not
is,
there.
yeah.
They're not present.
It's so honestly kind of freaky and sad for them.
But they don't
So
remember,
go ahead.
but they don't remember it. So the mom's traumatized.
I know. And we're like, is this going to happen again? Like he got them often. He doesn't remember. He'd wake up and be like, I slept great.
I'm like, I
I'm
didn't.
like, what? Yes.
Mm.
They can be common for after suppression of fever, maybe after meningitis. So a very high fever can leave you in a stramonium state. So would you think potentially, let's say you have a high fever, you use belladonna, it works well, but maybe they're left with that residual, like really this type of behavior after a fever? Maybe do
Fear.
stramonium acutely for like a week.
Yeah, maybe there's new fears, maybe there's new night terrors, something new that came up as a result.
Okay. It can also be good for after sexual or physical abuse. And that is if these symptoms start to present, right?
Right. So we don't just give it because someone had this happen to them. It's when these symptoms present after that.
After something like that. Okay. And also is great for strabismus or squinting. I never knew this. Beckham does this. Anyway, if you strabismus can be different ways, convergent, like where they come in both eyes come to the middle, or they are divergent where they go the other ways. It might be the only symptom that they have. If they've had a squint since birth, think about stramonium. It just is one to consider.
Awesome. General symptoms that you might see in an adult. So this is not just a children's remedy. This is also great for adults. Convulsions and epilepsy, twitching, jerking, might have suffered from sunstroke, remedy for post vaccination problems, general sleep disorders. So the two miasms that are most prominent in stramonium are psora and tuberculosis. And remember, if you want to learn more about the miasms, go and look for the course on my website. Calc Carb is the main constitutional state. Be careful with pulsatilla because pulsatilla looks like stramonium, but they're not exactly alike. So you have to read the two to know. Belladonna also can look like stramonium, and is that it? Let's
I think
see.
that might
Yeah, that's really
be.
it. Yeah. Oh, you know
I,
what? I really love stramonium in a 6C.
I was just going to say that it talks about potency, so that is a good thing.
And that doesn't mean 6C is the, end all be all, but it's a great place to start. Do it once or twice a day, and then you can go up in potency slowly if you need to. And of course, if you need help, reach out and let's do a consult. But potency is one of the hardest things to decide on. So it's nice and safe and easy to start with a 6C.
And I have seen, just speaking from my experience, I started with a 6C for my son who had night terrors as a very young baby through toddler years. And I did 6C, I think, every night before bed for probably like 2 months. And they did go away. He got much better. He also had the strabismus, which I didn't know. I wonder if it went away around the time I was using it. I wish I even knew to look for it.
Yeah.
This was before I was really deep in homeopathy. But you know what I have noticed is I did move to a 30 eventually, but I was using it maybe as he needed it for maybe 2 or 3 weeks before bed, and then I would stop. And recently, when I hear him like kicking the walls, like he'll go through periods of time where it kind of flares back up. I've used a 200 once, and then he won't need any more for, I mean, like weeks or months sometimes.
Yep.
And that just kind of happened. I really didn't do that on purpose, but it is cool when you look back and you see that progression in that, like it working that way, knowing what I know now. I didn't
Mhm.
even know.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. So thanks for being here with me, Bree, talking about stramonium. And we hope you guys will join us next time.
Thank you.